What's up, guys? Usually I make 60-second to a minute and a half long videos, but today is not going to be one of those videos. This one could be anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, maybe longer, hopefully not an hour. Usually I can tell this story within 45 minutes or so. What I'm going to be doing today, though, is telling you my life story as best as I can, as best as I remember it, and I hope maybe it encourages you or inspires you or helps you in some way, or at the least just makes you feel like you're not the only one who's experienced some of the things that I have. And really, I want to address this video to the people I went to high school and college with that I used to party with. And yeah, so it's to you guys. I love you. I hope you enjoy my story. I hope it helps you in some way. I have this flies tying set up here because being a longer video, you might get bored with just looking at my face sitting here with me talking the whole time. So I'm going to tie a fly, maybe 2 or 3, depending on how long it takes while I tell this story. So hopefully, yeah. I'm kind of nervous about this one. Haven't publicly put out a video of my testimony. I have it on a podcast where my sister interviewed me, but it's a little different. And this is just me telling you as real as I can what happened to me, what I've done, and the experiences that I've had. So yeah, here we go. My name is Keaton Hinsey, and I was born in 1996 in Greenville, South Carolina, to Carrie and Lori Hinsey. I have one little sister, a year younger than me. Some of y'all may know who she is. Her name is Kylie Odetta. She is a singer-songwriter. And so I grew up in the Greenville, South Carolina area. I grew up in a home where my parents were married, still married to this day. So the home I grew up in was a Christian home. My parents were both believers in Jesus. We grew up in the Episcopal church, or my sister and I did, and my dad was an usher. My mom was a youth director for a little while. I was in Sunday school every Sunday, pretty much. And as all stories go, there are layers to it. So I'm going to be bouncing around, talk about some different layers to my story. But one is definitely church, Christianity. So, like I said, I grew up in the Episcopal church. I grew up being in church pretty much every Sunday. So I knew the stories about Jesus, about the Bible in my head. But I never really had a genuine relationship with Jesus as I do now. I was actually turned off from Christianity when I was 12 years old. So what happened was I was going to the Episcopal church, like I said, and at the time, someone in the upper leadership of the church, I think it was a high bishop or somebody like that, basically proclaimed that homosexuality was no longer a sin. And when that happened, around the same time, the pastor that I grew up with, that was close to my family, he actually retired about that same point in time. So we decided to leave the Episcopal church. And when we left the Episcopal church, my parents took us to probably, 20 to 25 different churches to visit, to find the right one for us. Eventually, we landed at a Methodist church, and we loved the pastor, had a great youth group going, and just really loved the church, and we're excited about that church. Well, within about 6 months of attending there, basically becoming members there, the pastor was arrested for being involved with prostitution. And at that point in time, I was already a very rebellious, independent-minded kid. And so I saw the hypocriticalism, if that's a word, in that scenario and in the church. So, I saw a lot of people preaching a lot of things and not even living by it. I saw the Bible as a bunch of rules to keep me from enjoying my life, to keep me from having a good time. And so I basically swore off Christianity. I was intentional in the fact that I wanted nothing to do with it anymore. I would always say, I believe there's a God out there, but I cannot get down with this church stuff, with the Bible, with Christianity right now. I just can't. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So I completely turned from God, from the church in that point in time. And like I said, I never had a genuine relationship with Jesus at that point in time in my life, even growing up. I just knew the stories in my head. I didn't have the belief really in my heart. And so until I was 21 years old, I had no relationship with Jesus, wanted nothing to do with the church. And I'll come back to that point here in a little bit. But that's just some background about my church background, my church history. So growing up, I was always a very energetic, athletic, wild, outdoorsy kind of kid. I loved to be outside. I loved to climb trees. I loved to play sports and do pretty much anything active. I was always very high energy. When I was really young, I played almost all the main sports. I played football, baseball, soccer, and basketball. When I was 6 years old, I pretty much gave up basketball because at the end of a season, as little kids do, there was like a party, and we were playing basketball, and the coaches were playing with us. Well, one of the coaches happened to go up for a layup, and I was underneath him, and he came down with an elbow, not on purpose, but on my cheek, split my cheek open completely. I had to go to the doctor and get it basically glued back, my face glued back together. And so at that point in time, I was like, you know what? I ain't about basketball no more. Quit basketball. When I'm a bigger kid, I'm a bigger guy now, but when I was little, I was not bigger than everybody else. And so when I picked up tackle football, I was pretty average. I guess not even, I don't know. I got wrecked though. The team I was playing with had a lot of big kids on it, and I just kept getting plowed over. And I didn't like that. Hey! Dog growling at cat. So I didn't like that. And so I quit football when I was really young too. And I kept playing baseball and soccer through 6th grade. And then after 6th grade, I decided I was no longer going to play baseball, that I wanted to go all in on soccer. The reason that I chose to do soccer over baseball was because baseball was just a little too slow for me, too slow moving. It did not, like I said, I was high energy, so I wanted to be moving all the time. I liked that we was always running and whatnot, so that was good for me. So I gave up baseball and went all in on travel ball and played soccer year-round. Graduated from the YMCA, went to Carolina Elite Soccer Academy, also known as CISA, which some of y'all from the Greenville area are probably very well familiar with. And so I started playing club soccer. It wasn't until that first club soccer season where I started being bullied. I had made the top team, the premier team as they called it. I think it's called the elite team or the ECNL team now, but back then it was called the premier team. And I'd made the premier team, but that team had already been together for about a year, and so they already had their little friend group going. They had a little clique thing going on, and when I came in, I was not very well liked. And we did a summer camp at Furman University, where basically to help build camaraderie and unity between the team and get the coach used to the players, we'd basically go for 2 to 3 nights and stay overnight in the Furman dorms, and we would train like 4 times a day, just soccer like crazy. And it started off pretty good. I don't remember which day of the camp it was, but on one of the days in between sessions, the team that I was on, most of the players were gathered in one boy's dorm room. And I happened to walk in there, and, things at first seemed okay. We were just hanging out. And then all of a sudden, one of the older, bigger boys threw a bag of goldfish on the ground and basically spread out the goldfish, spilled it everywhere, and then grabbed me by the back of my neck, like this, and shoved my face to the ground and tried to make me eat them off the ground, while the entire team stood around laughing at me. And I resisted. Obviously, I did not eat the goldfish, and it was quite embarrassing, quite upsetting. And so at that moment, I realized how unliked I really was on that team. And over the years, it never really got better. So what made that even worse, when I got home, when the camp was over, on the way home from Furman, I had told my dad about what happened. And he told me that I should have fought the entire team, one by one. And he basically, without using the word coward, called me a coward for not standing up for myself. And I did not know it, but that had one of the greatest impacts on me. That it just had an incredibly powerful impact on me in a way that I didn't even know about until maybe 2 years ago. And I'm 28 now, and that happened when I was about 12. Very impactful. It is what John Eldridge in the book Wild at Heart calls a father wound, straight to the heart. And I spent a lot of my high school and college years trying to prove to myself, to other people, to my dad, that I was not a coward, that I was a man. And that came out in a lot of unhealthy ways. But that's just one little bit of the story. So the layer of bullying continued. I went to middle school and high school with some of the same kids that was on my team, and was always fighting against that. And it always felt like I was swimming upstream to be accepted, to be liked. And so I struggled with a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of insecurities. Going into middle school, I had a best friend who was applying to what's the school's name is Beck Academy, because it was like a very good academic school. And I thought that I wanted to go there because my best friend was going there. And, it sounded good at the time. We both had to apply. I actually got in first. My mom reminded me of this not too long ago, that I got in first, and later he got in. And we were both, signed up to go. But right before the semester started, the first semester of 6th grade, his dad got a new job. And so he moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. And so I went to a school where I knew nobody, except for the few kids on the soccer team who hadn't treated me very well. A lot of them would pretend to be my friends. Some would even bring me over to their house and let me spend the night at their house, but they never really treated me like a true friend should treat people. So being this 6th grader who knew pretty much nobody, who already struggled with insecurity and self-esteem issues, I realized or believed that if I can make people laugh, then maybe they will like me. So it was then I went down the path of being a class clown. And what I didn't know is that people were laughing at me, not with me. And so early on in 6th grade, I did make a few friends, but the bullying never really stopped. It just kind of transformed. Eventually, those two friends turned their back on me and found other friends and stopped being my friend, which hurt a lot. There was also an instance with those two friends where in 7th grade we were staying the night at one of their houses, and one of the kids, so when you're in 6th, 7th grade and you're all boys and you're all spending the night at each other's houses, you're still pretty much little guys and you'll share a bed, and at least we did, and it was no big thing. And so what happened was one of the kids woke up earlier in the morning than the rest of us, and he took a picture of two of us still in bed, still asleep, next to each other, and sent it to another kid who was also going to our school at the time. And that other kid decided to basically share it with the whole school. And I caught him in the bathroom one day, showing some kids in the bathroom this picture, basically spreading the rumor that we were gay. And it just wasn't true, but it made me very angry, very pissed off. And so I ended up getting in a fist fight with him in the parking lot after school that day. And that really did not help things when it came to my reputation, because a lot of the kids at school liked this particular kid. And so that just added to more of the issues I was having with people at school. There was also another instance in 7th grade. Being the class clown, I thought it was funny to run up and press the dunk tank button during a school festival. And I actually had a mother of another child grab me by my neck like this and shake my head and choke me out for doing that. We almost pressed charges, but we decided not to. But that was just another thing, kind of a random thing that happened in 7th grade. And so high school comes around. I was a pretty good soccer player at the time, but there was a lot of people who did not think that I was worthy to be on the varsity team. And so I actually made the varsity team when there were some other players on my club team that did not make the varsity team. They complained to the coach, they complained to the school, but the coach's decision was final. People would say that, I made the varsity team because my dad printed t-shirts for the team, and that's just not true. And so my freshman year came around. I was on the soccer team. I was on the varsity soccer team my freshman year, and some of the upperclassmen decided to start a rumor that I had Down syndrome, and which is just not true at all. I've always been a pretty intelligent kid. I was one of those kids in school who didn't even have to study much. As long as I listened a little bit, then I would make pretty much A's and B's. And so they started this rumor about me and basically spread it around the whole school, and there was nothing that I could do about it. And they nicknamed me, get this, Keetard the Retard. So my name's Keaton, Keetard the Retard. And it really had an incredibly powerful effect on a kid who already had terrible self-esteem problems. And I had to battle that literally through my senior year, because there were kids who were in my grade who would call me that, who would walk up to me in class and go, "Da-da." And what was even worse is that we had special ed kids at our school. So that happened. So growing up, going back a little ways, to add another layer to this story, I grew up in a family where drinking and going to parties was pretty normal. My parents would either have people over at our house on the weekends, or we would go to somebody else's house, and we had a great little friend group growing up that got along great together. But drinking and partying was pretty much the norm. And so when I was 15, I myself started, was I 15 or 14? Pretty much freshman year of high school is when I started partying, drinking. I wanted to be in that popular group. One reason was because I just wanted to be accepted. And one of the things the popular kids did is we drank and we partied. And so I started doing that my freshman year of high school. I got my first fake ID when I was 15 years old, and I had like 4 or 5 after that. Eventually had 1 or 2 that scanned. The reason I would have to get new ones is because my mom or dad would catch me, and I would have to get another one. But like I said, I grew up in a family where drinking and partying was pretty normal, pretty accepted, and I just thought it was just part of life, part of the way you do life. And so, with having already decided to reject God, Christianity, and that sort of moral foundation, I saw no problem with the partying lifestyle that I was getting into, and I enjoyed it very much. I actually had my first beer when I was 9. My parents we were across the street at a friend's house, and my dad was sitting on the couch, and he has a beer sitting on the arm of the couch, and it was just sitting there. He wasn't paying attention, and I crawled behind the couch, and I grabbed it, and I ran to the kitchen, and I chugged it. And so that was my first beer. I think it was a Busch Light. And so, growing up, I was big into partying. That was my thing. Even if I wasn't going to a party, I was sneaking beers and drinking every chance that I got. I was a big beer pong player back in those days and into college. Yeah, so that's one layer. There's more to that. I'll tell more when I get into my college years, but I'm pretty much going to talk you up through high school first, and then we'll get into college years, because college was a very tumultuous, life-changing time for me. So another layer to this story, when I was 7 years old, I was exposed to pornography for the first time. A kid whose grandparents lived in my neighborhood would come over every so often, and one day we were upstairs in our bonus room in my house, and he pulled up a very disgusting form of pornography. Really, all of it's disgusting because of what it is. Not that it's sex, but the fact that it's staged, and it's a video exploiting what God made beautiful. Pulled up not even normal porn, but it was like some very demented things on a website, and I can see those things in my mind to this day. And unfortunately, when I was 9 years old, I became the kid who was showing porn to other people. I found a stack of Playboy magazines in my house, and knew where they were hidden, and so anytime friends would come over, I would show them to my friends. I showed them to my sister and to some of her friends, and when I was 12 years old, I actually got my first laptop, and this was, if you remember, 12 years old was around the same time I was rejecting Christianity in all ways because of what happened with the pastor who was arrested for prostitution. I got my first laptop and became addicted to porn immediately. I found Pornhub in about 24 hours, and I lived with that porn addiction basically until I came into a relationship with Jesus at the age of 21. So from 12 to 21, I was a full-blown porn addict. I watched porn at least once a day, every day, and many days, multiple times. So I wasn't just watching it either. I was masturbating, some days 2 to 3 times a day. Looking back on it, I realized it was an addiction, but I also realized I was using it as a medicine to cope with and medicate and numb myself to some of the other things that I was feeling in my life in regards to my insecurities, my self-esteem, and whatnot. and just my understanding of myself in general. Unfortunately, though, I didn't have anyone in my life teaching me what healthy sexuality was. And so because of that porn addiction, my mind was very much distorted and twisted when it came to sexuality. Unfortunately, there were adult men in my life who would say things to me like, get it while you can, because when you get married, it's all going to stop, talking about sex. They would tell me that my right hand is my best friend, and that all guys watch porn, it's just what we do. And because I wasn't even in a church environment at that point in time, there was nobody speaking truth to me about what sexuality meant, godly sexuality actually is, and what God intends it for, and how to deal with it as a young man growing up. And that caused me to be very promiscuous in my dating relationships, and I didn't very much, even when I cared for a girl that I dated or liked, my end goal was always sex. I was just, my brain was wired that way because of the porn, because of the lies that I was being fed by those older men who were basically affirming and approving that kind of lifestyle, that kind of behavior. And it had a really big impact on me. I heard a lot of women doing that. And yeah, that carried into my college years. But that's some of the main things that happened to me up into my high school years, through my high school years. I was basically, for lack of a better term, a star athlete. I played varsity soccer 4 years in a row. I was always on the top team at the club that I played at. I went on to play 2 years of Division I college soccer. First year at James Madison, second at Wofford. I'll get into how that happened moving forward, but yeah. So that's the first half of my life, really. I'm 28 now, and so that was 0 to 18. Yeah. So the first year of college, I went to James Madison University, which is a school in Virginia. D1 school. It's about the size of Clemson when it comes to undergrad. It's about 20,000 undergrad. I would always describe it as like Clemson in the mountains, because that's just kind of what it felt like to me. And even though it wasn't really the mountains, it was the hills. But it was a lot colder. It was a lot colder up there. We would get feet of snow sometimes, which was something new for me, which was cool to experience. But I actually loved going to JMU. It was not something that was on my radar. When I was being recruited for college originally, I really wanted to go to College of Charleston, mainly because I knew the parties were good there, and I knew there was going to be a lot of pretty girls there. And at a college recruiting camp, the assistant coach, the son of the coach, the head coach, actually, saw me play, and he called me soon after and was interested. And he saw something in me. And so I went and visited, and I absolutely loved it. I loved visiting. I loved the team. I loved the place. I loved the idea of getting out of Greenville. I had been in Greenville my whole life. And so that's where I decided to go to. I got a scholarship to play there, and it was where I wanted to be. My freshman year, I got playing time as a true freshman. Did not have to redshirt. I didn't play a whole lot, but I did get opportunities. I played in the semifinal and the final of the conference tournament, and we actually won the conference and went on to the NCAA tournament. And eventually we lost to, I think it might have been first round. First round, we played UNC Chapel Hill, who at the time was one of the best soccer teams in the entire nation. And yeah, we lost. We got our butt whooped. It was like 6-1 or something like that, 6-0. We had 2 seniors get red cards, and it was just a mess. But still made it to the NCAA tournament, and it was cool. Unfortunately, the head coach, was forced into retirement after that season. It was his 29th year. They didn't even give him his 30th year. Still not sure exactly why that happened, but it did. And the assistant coach who took over, he and I could not see eye to eye. Without getting into too many details of that, he and I could not see eye to eye, and it was clear that I was not going to be part of his plans for the future of the program. It was clear that he really didn't want me to play on that team. It was clear that he was going to make an example out of me. And so I decided by the end of the semester end of spring semester, second semester of freshman year, to transfer. I really didn't want to. And so I transferred. I decided to go to Wofford. I wanted to go to College of Charleston, but I would have had to sit for a year because they were in our conference. And so when you transfer within conference, a player has to sit for a year. At least that was the rule then. And so I decided to go to Wofford, where I got a 95% scholarship. And I knew the coach because I grew up playing with the coach's son. And I thought, the soccer's going to outweigh the other things I knew I already wasn't going to like about Wofford. One of those things I didn't like was that it was so close to home. It's in Spartanburg, so it's 30 minutes away from Greenville. It's also one of the things I didn't like about it was that it was smaller than my high school. It had like 1,500 students total, and my high school was about 1,500 students. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of going to a small school. And the way that I saw it back then, I don't know if it's still this way, but there was basically three groups of people because Wofford was so expensive. There was the super nerds who were able to get in on scholarship. There were the athletes who were able to get in on scholarship. And then there was the rich snobby kids whose parents could afford to pay their way. And those were really the only three types of kids that I knew that went there. Maybe it's changed by now, but that was my experience. If you go to Wofford and you're offended by that, sorry, not sorry, that was my experience. But I thought soccer would be great and outweigh the things I didn't like. Unfortunately, it did not. So the summer between freshman spring and sophomore fall was the most angry, rageful I think I'd ever been in my life. I was already a hothead. I had a temper. I had gotten some fist fights before, kind of known for being aggressive on the soccer field, to the point where different referees in different states knew who I was when I would come into town. And so I was just so angry at this point in my life. I was still drinking and partying a lot. I was addicted to pornography still. But I was super angry about how things just went down at James Madison and how I was no longer going to be able to go there. I loved that school. I loved the friends that I had just made at that school, and there was a girl there who I loved, and but that summer, I was so angry. I was getting in fights with 50-year-old men in 6v6 soccer leagues. I would walk through a gas station just hoping somebody would bump into me so that I could get in their face and potentially start a fight. I was just angry. I was mad all the time. And by the time sophomore fall started at Wofford, that anger turned into depression. And something I didn't tell you guys earlier on in my middle school, high school years was that late middle school, early high school, I had developed a sleeping problem. I was struggling to sleep. And through high school, I would use melatonin, but eventually it just didn't work. So I realized that, after I would masturbate, I would get sleepy. So I started masturbating for sleep medicine, as crazy as that might sound, which only made my porn addiction and masturbation problem worse. But I developed this sleeping problem, and by the time I got to Wofford, it was so bad. That freshman spring, the second semester of freshman year, I did start smoking weed because I didn't care anymore because the coach and it was clear we weren't going to get along. And so I kind of just said, F it, screw it. I'm going to have fun with my friends and party a little harder than I already was. And so come around sophomore fall, first semester at Wofford, I'm dealing with the sleeping problem. I mean, it was so bad where I would get into bed at 11 o'clock at night, and I would just roll because my mind would be restless until 6 o'clock in the morning is about the time I would end up falling asleep. And then I'd have to wake up at 7 a.m. for an 8 a.m. class. And I just couldn't do that. So I started smoking weed to sleep. If you know anything about college sports, you can't be an NCAA athlete and get away with smoking weed for very long. So eventually my dorm was actually raided by campus police. They took my bong, they took my weed container, they took my socks that had weed emblems on them, they took a jeeb, which was another smoking apparatus. They took my bowl. They confiscated everything. And at that point in time, my soccer career was basically over. The coach gave me the chance to redeem myself, to work hard through spring, and basically earn my spot back, prove that I was serious about it. But I already knew, I had already decided I was not going back to Wofford after that first semester. So come around sophomore spring, I transferred back to James Madison with no soccer scholarship, not playing a sport. I took out a huge student loan to which I'm still paying on to this day. I had to convince my dad, I really manipulated my dad into taking out a second student loan in his name for me because out of state is so expensive and I had no scholarship. And I blew all that money because out of my 5 classes, I failed 4 of them. And that was because I pledged a fraternity and pretty much skipped every class. And the one class I passed, I actually set a record for skipping, but the professor said that my work was so good that he just couldn't bring himself to fail me, so he gave me a C. I got a 99 to a 100 on every single assignment. It was business communications, so it was like basically writing a business email or a business letter. And I guess I have a writing gift the Lord's given me. And I've been working in my dad's business since I was 11 years old, which, I grew up in my dad's business. There's actually something I forgot to share, but I'll go ahead and share it now. My dad started a t-shirt company out of our garage when I was an infant, like I'm talking about baby, and grew it to the point where he is now, and now he's in a 20,000 square foot building, rocking and rolling. He's printed for Clemson, Chick-fil-A, other big companies. He has his own brand that him and I started my freshman year of college called What the Fin. You may have heard of it, maybe not. But so like I grew up in the business world. Writing business emails and communicating in a business kind of manner was not very hard for me. So the teacher passed me, gave me a C, and that was the only class I passed. I did take a Maymester after I finished pledging the fraternity to just like try to get some credit, to also give me another chance to stay up at JMU for a little while longer, and I failed that class too. I went to class high every single day, and I missed more than was allowed. And so really, in one semester plus a Maymester, I failed 5 out of 6 classes, wasted a ton of money, upwards near $40,000, and I'm still paying on that loan today. During that semester of pledging the fraternity, though, I manipulated my dad into giving me money for food and beer and drugs. I was doing more than just drinking and smoking weed. I was doing cocaine here and there. I did mushrooms. I was dabbling. I would take Xanax every once in a while and drink on it. I did Molly 3 days in a row at one point in time, which is basically a form of ecstasy. Pain pills here and there. All through this time, still have porn addiction, still partying like crazy, still angry, getting in fights, wasting a lot of money, hurting girls, just not living right, living in a very destructive way. I had no relationship with God. And so at the end of that Maymester, I knew for a fact there was no way I could go back to JMU. I basically wasted all the money that I could possibly muster up. And so At that point in time, my parents were like, Keaton, your life's falling apart. I was starting to realize my life was falling apart. So I took that next semester off, which would have been junior fall, and spent that semester going to doctors and counselors and working for my dad and coaching youth soccer while living at home, just to try to figure out some things. And this is not where Jesus comes into the picture, not yet. And so during that semester, I was diagnosed with ADHD, 99th percentile, which means, if you don't know what that means, like top of the scale. 99th percentile means a higher level of ADHD than 99% of people who have ADHD or who have been tested for ADHD. And within ADHD, there are 3 subcategories, as I was taught. One is hyperactiveness, one is attentiveness, and the third is impulsiveness. On those 3 scales, though, I actually scale only tested in the 55th percentile for attentiveness, which is one of the reasons it probably wasn't picked up for me in school, because I didn't really have a hard time focusing. But I was also always very hyperactive and always very impulsive. So I started taking medicine for that. And what the doctors told me during that time was, this medicine is going to help you basically balance out the chemicals in your brain so that you can sleep better, so that you can focus more, yada, 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 this and that. And it just didn't happen that way. Pause. So since that last clip, I had to go do a real estate photo shoot. So yeah, just a quick plug. If you need that kind of stuff, let me know. Also, time to tie another fly. So one thing that I failed to mention about the summer after I failed all those classes at JMU, before I started going to the doctors and the counselors, was that I went to visit. All summer long I would go back and visit JMU at that point in time, just to hang out with friends, party with whoever was there and whatnot. There was one particular week before school started where I went on basically a 6-day binge. I was drunk every single day. During that week I went to the hospital because I got in a slip and slide accident and busted my arm open. And I also was arrested and spent a night in jail for a drunk in public charge at that point during that week. And that was just a mess. I was convicted of that charge, pled guilty to the drunken public charge. I was walking home from a party one night, had beers in my back pocket, and cops pulled me over. I mean, I was walking, so they didn't pull me over. I wasn't driving. But, yeah, I was underage, and they arrested me, threw me in the back of the cop car. So, that's just more evidence that my life was falling apart. The life that I was living was not a good one. I thought it was good. I would drive up to JMU and put on my Snapchat story, headed to the promised land. It was a fun place, but it was not the promised land. Okay, back to the semester that I took off and was starting the ADHD medicine. So basically what happened with that is they put me on 20 milligrams of Vyvanse to start me off. And within, I think it was 3 months, they bumped me up to 70 milligrams of Vyvanse plus a booster, because they said because my body was building tolerance to it so quickly. And it did not help my sleeping problems at all. In fact, it made them worse. I was barely sleeping at all. And when I went back to college, which was the next semester, I did go back to college the next semester at the University of South Carolina. And while I was there, I basically would rearrange the apartment every few days. I was doing the laundry every day. There was never more than like a day's worth of laundry in my basket. I was drinking a pot of coffee a day, which definitely wasn't helping. I was cleaning the house every day, cleaning the dishes every day, which was not like me. I would clean every once in a while, but that Vyvanse just had me wired. in just another kind of way. So during that semester, really before that semester, I went into it with the potential of being able to play soccer again. But because it was my third school transfer, I was going to have to sit a year anyways. And at that point in time, it just was not worth it to me. So I decided to just do school. And I also decided that semester that I really needed to get the drinking under control. I partied a little bit here and there, but not too much because of how bad things got for me and how my life was falling apart in a large way because of the drinking. And so I decided to cut that back. I was still smoking a lot of weed because, I wasn't sleeping at all. So I tried to take school more seriously that semester, considering it's my third school. Junior spring is what it would have been technically. And yeah, so early on in that semester, I got a puppy. She's actually kicking her face right now. You can probably hear her in the background. Hey, stop. Layla, stop. Kicking herself in the face, which is not cool. I got a black lab because a good friend of mine growing up, a best friend of mine, brought his black lab puppy to my apartment. And I just fell in love with this puppy and wanted one for myself. And I also thought, you know what, maybe if I have another life to take care of, I will have a reason to not go out and party so much. And it kind of did work that way. I took raising her very seriously. I did live on a third floor apartment though, so that made things quite difficult. One time I actually fell down the stairs when it was raining outside. I slipped down an entire flight of stairs and had to go to the hospital. My whole arm, from wrist to elbow, was just black from bruising. Praise God, though, nothing was broken. So, yeah, raised that puppy. Actually did really good in school that semester. I started dating a girl that semester as well. And so, by the end of that semester, I was supposed to go to New York City to do an internship with my dad's cousin for real estate investment. After my freshman year of college, I actually did go up there for a short 2-week introductory type of internship. And so I was going back for a longer one, for a more intense one, for a deeper dive, so to speak. But things got pretty crazy at this point in time. And it's because Jesus came into my life in a very mighty and powerful way. What I'm about to say might sound crazy to you. It might sound unbelievable. But it's my story and it's truly what happened. So, the night before, this was the week after school had let out, my girlfriend went back home for the summer to where she was from. And I basically packed a bag to go to New York City. I tried to pack super light. I did not want to have a check bag, so I packed just carry-on stuff like I try to do when I fly. I try to fly light. And the night before, it was a 6 a.m. flight. The night before, I had woken up crying. Not crying, I wasn't crying immediately. I was crying later. I woke up and somehow, this part's fuzzy to me. I was half asleep through all this. Somehow I came to Google Images on my phone. And I saw this, painting of Jesus. And I just started weeping. And I couldn't help but say his name. Layla, stop! I just kept thinking and saying Jesus and was just weeping. And so I ran into my dad's bedroom. He was the only one home at the time. My mom and sister were out of town for some music event for Kylie. And I was just weeping. And I didn't really understand it. Didn't know why. And my dad was like, and so I showed him the phone like this. I was like, Jesus. And I was crying. Oh, that is my lasagna. Hold on, I'll be right back. So actually, the lasagna's not ready yet. So, that next morning, after my dad had told me to go back to bed, because I ran in there and told him, whatever I told him. And he told me to go back to bed, that he had no idea what I was talking about, and to just go to sleep. So I did that. And I woke up the next morning and felt compelled to bring a Bible with me on the plane. So I actually had a stack of Bibles in the corner of my bedroom, because all that time I was rejecting Christianity. My mom would basically give me Bibles and journals and say, you need to work on a relationship with God. How's your relationship with God? Yada, yada. And I was like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. I don't want nothing to do with this. And so I had options. They were all covered in dust. But I grabbed the smallest one in the stack and threw it in my book bag and headed to the airport. So, long story short, I'm in the airport and I'm reading my Bible while I'm sitting there waiting. Honestly, I have no idea what I was reading, but I was reading the Bible, and I got on the plane, and then I was reading the Bible some more, reading the Bible some more, reading the Bible some more. Pretty much read the whole Bible, not the whole Bible, read the Bible the whole way to New York City, but I never made it to New York City. You might be wondering, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's because the pilot came over on the loudspeaker while we were in the cabin in the air and said there was inclement weather over JFK. So we're going to be landing in Baltimore to let the storm pass. And so the plane landed in Baltimore. And when the plane landed in Baltimore and pulled into the gate, this voice came into my mind and said, "Get off the plane and leave your bag." I'm like, what? The voice spoke again, said, "Get off the plane and leave your bag." So, I got off the plane and left the bag. This voice, though, it came with a peace that I cannot really describe. The only way I've described it in the past is that it felt like all of a sudden when this voice came into my head that I was in this golden bubble and I had to follow this voice. Like it was just so clear in my mind. And so I got off the plane and left my bag. And so I'm like wondering what the heck is going on? What is this? And then the voice speaks again and tells me to go to Annapolis, Maryland. And so Annapolis is about 45 minutes from Baltimore. And I'm like, what the heck? What? So I started thinking in my head, like, why would I need to go to Baltimore? And what comes to mind is that the Naval Academy is in Baltimore. That the Naval Academy is in Annapolis. And my best friend in high school, he went to the Naval Academy to play soccer. And a year prior, him and I had a falling out at a bar downtown Greenville. And basically weren't on speaking terms from what I remember. And so I was like, maybe I'm supposed to go and reconcile with my friend and, go see him. He was a believer. So I was like, this may be what I'm supposed to do. So I did. I went to Annapolis. I took a cab there. It was about a 45-minute ride. And I think the whole way I was reading my Bible still. By the time I got to Annapolis, I knew that this was God, that this was a God thing happening. And so I ended up walking around the Naval Academy. I went to the Naval Academy during the day while it was open. And basically walked around the campus hoping I was just going to run into him. And it didn't really happen like that. I ended up waiting at the soccer field thinking maybe, they'll come out for practice or something. And that didn't happen. So eventually I think I called him. I can't remember if I called him or I texted him, but I told him that I was in town. But before I called him, I had been wandering around the campus for hours, stopping at different places and like praying there and reading the Bible there and just looking at the views. And so eventually I met up with him. But when I told him what was happening and explained it all, he was he was a little freaked out. He definitely seemed a little freaked out, which is totally understandable because I was talking about God. I was talking about this voice, which God was not something he knew me for talking about. Or God was not something I was known to be talking about because I had nothing to do with the church. I didn't want anything to do with the church. And so basically, we only had 10 minutes or so to talk because the Naval Academy, if you know anything about military schools, they're super strict and very tight scheduled. And so he had to go back to, whatever he had to do. And so I just kept on walking. I had nothing with me except for my Bible, my wallet, and my phone. Previous to meeting up with my friend, I told my dad what was happening, and he was freaking out. He basically thought that I was going crazy, and he called my counselors, and they said that I was going crazy. They actually said that I was having an episode of psychosis, which if you don't know what that is, it basically means that you are out of touch with reality and a danger to society because you're basically hallucinating and you don't know what's going on. And that wasn't true at all. So after that, eventually I had to stop communicating with my dad because he just wouldn't let that go and was trying to get me back to New York, and I just had to follow this voice. I had such a peace about it, and I knew I had to follow this voice no matter what anybody said. So I kept walking. I basically went on what some would call a walkabout and walked the streets of Annapolis, in and out of town, all night long. I came to a bunch of different places. One place I came to was a softball field. It was lit up, like all the lights were on, but there was nobody there, not a car in the parking lot. And so I went out to the pitcher's mound. Actually, I sat in the dugout for like 5 minutes, just sat there. And eventually I went out onto the pitcher's mound, and I prayed face down for like 5 minutes. Don't know what I said, have no clue. And then eventually I walked to this bridge, and on this bridge there was nobody there, so it was getting pretty late into the night at this point in time. And I walk across this bridge, and I stand up on like the pinnacle of it, like right in the middle. And I hear this voice, not the same peaceful voice, say, "Jump off." And I'm like, do what? Do what? And then the peaceful voice comes back and says, "Do not test the Lord your God." And so at the time, I didn't know that was a Bible verse, but it is a Bible verse. And so I step back off the bridge, I turn around, I start walking back down the bridge, and I see these two guys. They're like thug-looking guys, real thug-looking. And I just had a bad vibe, bad feeling about them. But the voice told me to walk between them. So they're walking at me, I'm walking at them, and as I walk between them, they basically part like this and then come back together when I passed them. They parted like the Red Sea. And but then I was going to turn around and look back at them when I got further down the way, and this voice, the peaceful voice, said, "Do not turn around and look at them, they're looking at you." And I was like, okay. So I did not, just kept on walking. Eventually, I came to this restaurant, and it was closing. It looked like it was closing. So I walked to the back of it, and I asked them if they had any extra food that they could give me, because I'd been walking for a while at that point in time and hadn't eaten anything. And there was a guy standing on the back porch of this, or the dock or the bay or whatever you call it, of this restaurant, and he was standing there with a to-go box. He was like already there when I walked up, and he did not say a word to me. That's the lasagna. Speaking of food, hold on. Lasagna was good. Okay, so like I said, the guy was standing there with the to-go box, and when I asked him the question, he did not say a word. He just looked at me and went like this. Handed me this to-go box. So I took this to-go box. I did not open it immediately. I actually went down underneath, near the bottom of the river, where the river I had walked over the bridge of. And so I sat down next to this river and ate the sandwich. Or not the sandwich, it wasn't a sandwich. I opened it up and it was a fish fillet, a grilled fish fillet with lemon pepper seasoning. No bun, no sauce, no rice, no nothing, just a fish fillet. And so I ate it. And I kept walking throughout the night. Came to this part of the bridge, of another bridge, I think it was another bridge, where it was like the end of a bridge. So like an old bridge had been there and they basically cut it off and had a gate on the end of it. There were some kids smoking weed down there. I asked them for some and they wouldn't give me any. I asked them for a ride, they wouldn't give me a ride. So I just kept on walking. Eventually I came to this war memorial, where if you've seen one of these, you know what I'm talking about. It's where there's like a bunch of pillars that are situated in a half circle kind of thing, and there's usually a plaque in the middle or somewhere nearby that tells about what it's memorializing. And so I came to one of those, and this is like late into the night at this point, like well past midnight. And so I actually laid down there on the ground, face down, with my head on my Bible like this, and I had my hands out like this, and I prayed there for an hour. After an hour, I felt a hand on my left shoulder, and I heard my name gently whispered into my left ear. And at the same moment, I had this vision of Jesus kneeling next to me with his hand on my shoulder, speaking into my ear. And at that point in time, I threw my hands up and I said, all right, Lord, I'm done running. I hear you. I know it's you. I know it's real. I give you my life. I surrender. I'm done. I believe you. I hear you. I'm done. And it was in that moment that I gave my life to Jesus. And nothing's been the same since. But that is the very moment I gave my life to Jesus. It was in Annapolis, Maryland on May 6th, 2017. And about that exact same time, at that exact same time, the sun was starting to rise. So I had literally been walking all night, talking to God, just having this incredible experience with God in Annapolis, Maryland. And but the story doesn't end there. So what happens next is I eventually catch a cab. I was not going to New York City. I knew for a fact that I was not supposed to go to New York City. So I got a friend of mine who was gracious enough to help me with this. He worked for Delta Airlines, and he got me a standby flight to the city where my girlfriend at the time was living. And so I caught that flight and went there, and we actually stayed. We stayed the night at a hotel that she worked at because I did not want to go to her house. I had never met her mom, and it just didn't feel right to do that. At that point in time, I was very exhausted. I was very vulnerable, so to speak, because of all that happened. And so we slept in this cabana. We snuck into the pool area of this particular hotel and slept in the cabana. And like one of those cabanas where it's got like the cover on all four sides. And the next day she drove me back to Greenville. Well, when I got back to Greenville, my dad was obviously concerned, and so he wanted me to go to the hospital to get my vitals checked. I did not want to do that. All I wanted to do was sleep because I was exhausted at that point in time from basically being awake for almost 2 days. And so when we got to Greenville, he basically insisted that I go. I did not want to go. He insisted that I go. And so eventually I gave in and went to the hospital. And once I got checked in, they put me in these dark red, maroon, almost gamecock color robes. And they told me that if I ever was to walk out of the hospital in these colors, that the policemen would tackle me. And at that point in time, I was like, what the heck is going on right now? What I didn't realize was that they were checking me into the mental health part of the hospital, basically the mental asylum of the hospital. And basically had deemed me a threat to society at that point in time because of my counselor's diagnosis of psychosis, which was just not true. But that's what was happening. So all night long while I was in that mental health part of the hospital, the social workers were coming in, doctors were coming in, asking me if I was abused as a child, sexually, physically, emotionally, all these different things, asking me all these kind of questions. And it was during that evening that the same voice, which I now know to be the Holy Spirit, spoke to me again, the same peaceful voice, and said, "Be calm or you'll get stuck here." And so it was in that moment that I knew where I was at was very serious. There was people in the rooms next to me that I could hear screaming, cackling, making legitimately demonic sounds, scary sounds. I saw one guy like sitting in a wheelchair and his head was like rolling back and forth side to side, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life. So yeah, and eventually the next morning I got out, and they referred me to another place. And this other place, my dad and my girlfriend went with me to. And at that place, I can't remember what it was called, but they basically tried to get my dad to sign me over to the government to permanently admit me to this facility. And at that point, my dad just knew in his heart that something was off, that this was not right. And throughout that whole time in the hospital, I was just kept saying, "I just want to go to sleep. I'm just tired. Let me go to sleep." So, long story short, didn't go in there to that place at all. Came home. I slept for about 2 days straight. And after that, I really dove into my relationship with Jesus. I was pretty much praying and reading my Bible every single day. I was attending church with my parents and my sister. And I was very private about my relationship for about the first year of after being saved. And so about a year in, my sister invited me to come to youth. She had seen the growth in me and invited me to basically become a youth leader. Thought I would be good at it. We were going to New Spring at the time. And I was like, honestly, no, Kylie, I ain't ready for that. I ain't ready to be no small group leader, nothing like that. Like, I don't know enough, yada, yada. And she was like, well, you don't have to be. You could maybe be on campus safety team. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. And so basically, I signed up for the campus safety team, was interviewed by the youth pastor, went through the whole process of the onboarding of becoming a youth leader, background check, all that stuff. And that was the beginning of my time in youth ministry. There's more to that story that I'll get into, but I do want to say that it was after that experience with Jesus that I really realized that my life needed to change. Did everything change immediately? Absolutely not. No, it took time for me to stop watching porn. Really, that was one of the first things to go, which I'm very grateful for. But it took years for me to stop masturbating. I stopped watching porn within the first year of being in a relationship with Jesus, but I did not stop masturbating until just a few short years ago. 2 years ago, actually. And I kind of had already stopped drinking, but I was still on occasion let loose, so to speak. And COVID was one of those times, actually, that revealed that I still kind of had a problem with drinking. And so I was working on that. And but Jesus did help me with the sleeping problems whenever I did not smoke just to sleep anymore. But I sleep like a baby now. But I don't drink to get drunk no more. It's been 6 years now since I've watched porn, since I pulled up a site. Definitely still struggle with lustful thoughts, but porn is not part of my life anymore, and that's all thanks to God, all thanks to Jesus and the power of the Holy Spirit within me that He gives to those who believe. But the story's not over. There's always more to the story, and if I stop there, I could stop there. So, another layer to the story. like I said, I grew up in my dad's t-shirt company. When I was 11 years old, I started working for my dad, working in his shop, designing t-shirts, learning how to design, sweeping floors, driving forklifts, cleaning screens, all sorts of things like that. Growing up, I saw my dad work really hard to provide for our family, and he still does that to this day. But the business he was running at the time was basically draining the life out of him, and I saw that. And he had mentioned to me one day while I was a freshman in college that he wanted me to take over the business eventually. And I flat out told him no, because I did not want to live the lifestyle that he was living. I did not want to fall asleep on my laptop in the reclining chair in the living room every night because of what work was doing. And so that was kind of a wake-up call for him, and realizing that he had built a business that his family did not want to take over. And so we decided, because we had the ability to print, to start our own t-shirt brand, to bring some more fun into it. And so we love the beach, something my dad took up, my parents always did with us growing up, is they always took us to the beach at least once a summer. And so we started a brand. We knew it was going to be about the beach, a t-shirt brand, a lifestyle brand, to give us an excuse to go to the beach more often. So that's why the brand is very much about the beach and outdoors. But we were sitting around the office one day trying to brainstorm for this brand. And we don't remember who said it, and so we say that God dropped it in our laps, because neither of us remember who actually said it for the first time. One of us literally said, "What the beep?" And then the next one of us, whoever it was, said, "What the fin?" And we were like, light bulb. Boom. Whoa. So basically, the understanding that we got with it was that this is a way to take a cultural negative, WTF, and put a positive, lighthearted, better spin on it. And so if you think of what the fish fin, surfboard fin, I guess you could say wakeboard fin and stuff too. But yeah, so we started that brand. I started, working part-time for Dad on the brand while I was in college here and there. But after my experience with Jesus, I never went back to college and just went full-time with Dad. And so that's pretty much all I did until 2022, when the Lord called me out of the business. I had wanted to leave for a few years prior, because I knew that the Lord was calling me into ministry. He revealed to me and my dad that at a men's conference that we went to at New Spring. He actually revealed that to me the same year? Yeah, the same year my wife and I got married. So my wife is not the same girl that I was dating at USC or when I got saved. My wife actually used to work for What the Fin while I was in college, being crazy, living recklessly, living apart from God. And she, basically wanted nothing to do with me at that point in time, because I wasn't living right. And, but later on, after my life had been changed by Jesus, my wife saw that. She wasn't my wife yet, but she had seen that, and she had actually left working for my dad to start her own business. And it was a photography business. And I was trying to learn photography so that I could spend more time, or so we wouldn't have to hire as many photographers to do work for What the Fin, so we could have higher quality photos and not have to hire photographers all the time. So I got into photography, and I wanted to get better, and I knew she was good at it. So I sent her a message, and I hit her up, and I was like, "Hey, would you be willing to get lunch and teach me photography?" Well, hold on. There's backstory to this. So that first year of youth ministry in 2018, when I was a youth leader on the safety team, I went to what's called Gauntlet, which is a summer youth camp put on by New Spring. And at that youth camp, the Lord actually told me to break up with my girlfriend that I was dating at the time. And the same one I flew down to when I had my experience with Jesus. And so literally I had not been baptized since I had been saved. And so at that camp, the Lord told me to break up with my girlfriend and also told me to get baptized. So I got baptized in what's called Session 8, which is basically the last day of camp, but it's actually the first day back in town after camp, where we're back at our regular church building. And I knew that I had to break up with her before I got baptized. The baptism was like a new start kind of to me, and a fresh start. And so I broke up with her that Saturday before baptism on Sunday. And so I did that. And then I got baptized. And then it was in February of 2019 that I contacted my now wife about learning photography. But right after I got baptized, I made this basically a vow to the Lord to look at no woman from a dating perspective, to basically avoid anything regarding women in any way until Christmas, to just work on my relationship with God. And because I had had such a promiscuous, tumultuous, unhealthy relationship with women since I was very young, and it was during that 4-month time period from August to December, I pretty much spent every night on my face praying, reading the Bible, journaling, and just really working on my relationship with God. And God blessed that. He truly honored that and helped me in a lot of ways during that time in my perspective towards women, which, if you don't realize it, porn will completely warp in a evil way anyone's perspective towards sex, towards the opposite sex, towards your own sex, towards sexuality in general, towards marriage and what sex is supposed to be like, and all kinds of things. So after that 4-month period, the Lord had just changed me in relationship ways, in the way that my mind thought about women a lot during that time. And so January came around, and my time of commitment to no longer look at a woman my time of not looking at a woman to date basically had come to an end. But I was so content in my relationship with God, I wasn't even concerned about it. To be quite honest, I was content for the first time in my life to just be by myself. And that was because of my relationship with God. God just was giving me that peace by being close to Him. The Bible says that if you draw near to God, God will draw near to you. And I experienced that. I still experience that. And so, come February, I was trying to get into photography. My wife had been away from my dad's business for a while and had been into hers. And so I hit her up and was like, hey, would you want to get lunch with me? And she said yes, which was awesome. She said yes. And so we got lunch and we talked about photography very, very little. Very little bit at all. And so after that lunch, we basically were like, what are you doing tonight? You want to hang out? And so we started hanging out that night. And basically, she laid all the cards on the table for me and basically told me if I was going to be who I used to be, that it wasn't going to work out, and that God was going to be first in our relationship if we were going to have one. And it was a week later we agreed to start dating. And then we got engaged, and then we got married, and yeah. But that same year, 2019, that I started dating my now wife, the Lord spoke to me at a men's conference that I went to with my dad, at New Spring, and told me that I was called to ministry. And I was like, all right, Lord, well, I'm going to need you to confirm this, please, because I just want to make sure I'm hearing right. And so my dad leaned over to me and said, you're called to ministry. And I was like, okay, all right, the Lord is speaking right now, and I better listen. So ever since that point, I knew that eventually I'd be leaving my dad's business to go into ministry. And honestly, I wanted to go sooner than I did. I was still serving as a youth leader, and I kept doing that. But I knew that there was more coming. And so then 2020 happened. COVID happened. And it was during COVID that the Lord just, me and my wife were traveling 45 minutes one way to get to church. And the Lord just, during that time, made it clear that He wanted us to leave New Spring, that He was just leading us away. And so we started visiting her home church that she grew up at, that she was baptized at when she was a little girl. And it didn't take long. It took about maybe 8 or 9 weeks of visiting for the Lord to just make it feel like home for us, for me. And so we decided to make Mount Lebanon our home church. And we've been going there ever since. And as soon as the Lord made it clear that, we were going to be there for a while, I was like, all right, who's the youth pastor? Got to get involved. And so met the youth pastor, and basically immediately started serving there at the youth, and have been serving there ever since. That started in 2021 when I started serving with the youth at Mount Lebanon. And since then, the youth pastor has become one of my best all-time friends. I've made a lot of other great friends at Mount Lebanon, and I'm very grateful for my Mount Lebanon family. Truly, though, I never thought I'd be in a Baptist church. It's a Baptist church because I grew up in the Episcopal church, and then was baptized in a non-denominational and went there and served there first. And then the Lord brought me to a Baptist church. So that's where I'm at now. But, it's Lord's will be done, not mine. His will is always better than mine will ever be. All right, so a year later at another summer camp, the Lord does crazy things at summer camp. When you just take a break from the rest of the world and just go dive into Him, His Word, His presence with other believers, it's just amazing what He does. And so at a summer camp with Mount Lebanon, on one of the last nights of camp, the Lord, I was sitting outside what's called the worship barn. Basically, it's where the services are held, and they basically hold us outside of this barn until it's right up until time, and they open them and everybody floods in. But we were sitting out there waiting, and I was leaned up against the barn, and I was just trying to catch my breath, because if you've ever been to a youth camp, man, them things are awesome, but they're also tiring too. They can be very exhausting. So I was just catching my breath, and the Lord said, go to John 1:22. He spoke that to me. That same peaceful, quiet voice said, go to John 1:22. So I was like, okay, Lord. All right, sounds good. And so I went to it. It is where John the Baptist is being basically questioned by the Pharisees. And they keep saying, who are you then? We need to tell our superiors who you are. Because they were thinking maybe he was going to say he was the Messiah or something. They didn't like him because everyone was going to him to get baptized. But my eyes could not come off of the part of the verse where it said, who are you then? Who are you then? I'm like, Lord, why can I not stop looking at these words? And He said, I'm going to tell you who you are tonight. I'm like, okay. And then so I walk in, they open the doors, we walk into service, and I'm thinking, all right, Lord's going to speak to me through the message that the pastor gives. It's going to just be, He's going to tell me something. And so I sit down in the chair where I'm going to sit for service, and I just put my head down, just pray for a moment. And the Lord tells me, He says, youth pastor. I'm like, what? Lord, we ain't even got into worship yet. Youth pastor. Okay. All right. And so after that camp, I mean, a lot more happened in between that, but the night was amazing. Don't remember what the message was, but I do remember bawling my eyes out in worship 2 different times. One time, one of my little bros, my youth students came, put his arm around me and started praying for me. And I was already ugly crying, but he put his arm around me and started praying for me. And I started crying again, just ugly crying. And so then that night, near the end of the night, like after service is over, I tell the youth pastor and I tell him I know I got to put my 2 weeks notice in and whatnot. And so I come back from camp and I put my 2 weeks notice in. The Lord provided the way, though. He allowed my dad, he led my dad and my dad's business partner to give me a severance package. And so he paid my salary out from August to December to give me time to figure out what this youth ministry thing is going to look like. So I actually spent 5 days a week with the youth pastor, just learning from him, being mentored by him, basically just getting a crash course in ministry. Because I've been in the business world for so long, it's totally different. And I basically no job openings came open for me during that 4-month time period. And so the end of the year was getting close. End of November was approaching and I had no job. But my salary time was coming to an end and I had no idea what I was going to do. And because no jobs had opened up and because I did not feel like the Lord was leading me anywhere else, that he wanted me to keep serving at Mount Lebanon, I did. I kept serving at Mount Lebanon, but knew that somehow, some way I was going to have to make some money. So I prayed about it and I felt like God wanted me to freelance. So I come up with a brand name, which is called KH Photo and Design to start with. And basically put together a business plan, built a website, put together some pricing, some graphics and whatnot. And January 2023, I started freelancing. Paul talks about in the Bible how he was making tents while he was traveling around the world planting churches. And so my t-shirts and my photographs and my graphics are my tents. And they still are to this day. I know it's not that far removed. It's September of 2024, but I've been freelancing since 23 and still serving at Mount Lebanon. And there's another part in there. Back in what's the time frame? I'm trying to remember the time frame here. Spring of 23. Spring of 23. The youth pastor was inviting me to substitute teach and give devotionals at a place called the Blue Ridge Christian Learning Center. And I did it. I substitute taught every once in a while, not all the time. And then that next summer of 23, there came a job opening for a part-time middle school teacher job. And so I accepted that. And fall of 23, spring of 2024 was my first year teaching as a part-time middle school Bible teacher. And I'm still doing that this semester. Right now I'm in the beginning of fall 2024. And so that's a ministry door the Lord opened for me, other than just serving at Mount Lebanon's youth group. But the Lord's also opened up some other cool doors for me. This summer, he allowed me to, through a friend of my mom, teach graphic design at boys' group homes. And I actually, because they're a faith-based organization, the nonprofit that brought me in to those group homes, I was allowed to share my faith. I was allowed to share my testimony with these guys and talk to them about God's Word, which was just a beautiful thing. So I got to teach them graphic design and teach them about God's Word and share the gospel with them, which is just a beautiful thing. I filmed this video about a year ago, multiple times, and was just too scared to post it. But since I've been doing these other recent videos, the Lord had laid it on me just last week that he wanted me to give the testimony another shot. So here it is. here it is. It is what it is. You're not going to get any sugarcoating from me. I'm going to tell you how it is. I mean, my story's messy. It's dirty. It's got plenty of dark parts to it. I am a broken, imperfect human being. The only difference between me and somebody else who doesn't believe in Jesus is that I've been forgiven. And I'm on a path to healing. And God has turned me around and He's redeeming my life. At the beginning of this video, I said that I really wanted this video to be addressed to those people I partied with in high school and college. And what I want y'all to know, that I know now, is that nothing in this world's ever going to satisfy you. It's never going to be enough. The sex, the women, the drugs, the alcohol, it's never going to be enough. The money, the success, it's never going to be enough. What I also know to be true is that we're all wounded human beings, and we often use those things to distract us or numb us from what we're really feeling inside. And we've got to face those things, but we need Jesus' help to face them in a healthy way. We need Jesus' help to heal from them, because what I also know to be true is if we don't heal, we will bleed all over other people in our life, and we don't want to do that. We want to help people, but before you can help people, you've got to heal. And I by no means am totally healed. I have a lot of healing to go, a lot of things I'm still wrestling with from my past, a lot of sin I'm still trying to conquer. But I'm not where I used to be. I'm not who I used to be. Also know this, that it's not about cleaning yourself up to come to Jesus. No. You come to Jesus just as you are, in faith, believing in who He is and what He said and the fact that He's died on the cross for your sins, to bring you into a relationship with Himself. He'll clean you up through time, through relationship with Him. You come to Him right where you're at, in all the addiction, in all the hurt, in all the pain, in all the mistakes, all the failure. Come to Him with all of that. He won't leave you as you are. If you genuinely take your relationship with Him seriously, He will transform your life. There's nothing like it. There is no replacement for the peace of God. There's no replacement for a relationship with Jesus. There's no replacement. It's only Jesus. And it's important to have a community of believers around you to help you grow in this once you make that decision. Man. I know I did not tell that story smoothly. I know I jumped around a lot, but it's my story. And there's obviously a lot more to it. How can you tell 28 years worth of somebody's story in a 45-minute, hour-long video? You can't. But those are some of the bigger moments that had, and bigger parts, bigger aspects to my life and my story. Maybe one day I'll redo this, and I'll do it again, and I'll give you more detail, or I'll tell it more smoothly without as many ums. But yeah, man, I hope this helps somebody. I'm doing this for God because He told me to, and also for you, whoever's watching this, hoping that you see that there is hope for change in your life, in someone else's life. Maybe you already have a relationship with Jesus, and somebody in your life has gone astray or is living destructively and rebelliously like I was. It's not over. Don't stop praying. Don't stop believing. Keep seeking the Lord. If you don't know Him, it's as simple as believing in your heart that Jesus rose from the grave and confessing with your mouth that He is Lord. That's what the Bible tells us. John 3:16, Jesus Himself said that for everyone who believes in Him, they will not perish but have eternal life. Eternal life starts the moment you put your faith in Jesus. Yeah, that's all I got. I'll actually finish this fly out, and if anything else comes to mind while I'm working on it, I'll say it. But otherwise, you can either sign off or watch me finish this fly. Yeah. That's it right there. It'll run hook point up because of the dumbbell weight on the bottom. Yeah. Fish. Go fishing.